Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Quiet Before. Wade Richardson adjusted his reading glasses and closed the engineering manual he'd been studying for his contractor certification exam. At 34, the transition from Delta Force operator to civilian life still felt surreal some days. 3 years since his discharge, and he was finally building something resembling normal. A successful construction business, a house in Pine Ridge County, and most importantly, his 8-year-old daughter Julie, who filled every corner of his world with laughter. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9 p.m. as Wade climbed the stairs to check on Julie. Her room was an explosion of art supplies and half-finished drawings. She'd inherited his analytical mind, but channeled it into creativity instead of warfare. Wade smiled, remembering how she'd spent the afternoon building an elaborate fort in the backyard, complete with tactical advantages she'd unconsciously designed. "Daddy," Julie's sleepy voice called from her bed. "Just checking on you, sweetheart." Wade tucked the blanket around her small frame. "Will you tell me another story about Grandpa Earl's ranch?" Wade's father had been his hero growing up, a Vietnam veteran turned cattle rancher who taught Wade everything about honor, loyalty, and protecting what mattered. Earl Richardson had supported Wade's military career, but celebrated even harder when Wade chose family over continued service. "Tomorrow, I promise." "Sweet dreams, Jules." Downstairs, Carrie Richardson sat at the kitchen table, her patrol uniform still crisp despite a full shift as Pine Ridge County's newest deputy. At 29, she'd married Wade during his final year of service, and he thought her ambition to join law enforcement showed they shared similar values. "How was your day?" Wade asked, kissing the top of her blonde head. "Long Salvatore had me running evidence to the state lab again." She didn't look up from her phone. "I might be late tomorrow night, too. Budget meetings." Deputy Salvatore Perkins had been mentioned frequently lately. Wade had met the man once, smooth-talking, ambitious, with the kind of confidence that came from never facing real danger. Something about Perkins had triggered Wade's threat assessment instincts, but he'd chalked it up to veteran paranoia. "Julie's been asking about visiting Grandpa Earl's ranch again," Wade said, settling into the chair across from his wife. Carrie's thumb scrolled endlessly across her screen. Wade studied her profile, noting the subtle changes he'd been cataloging for months. The way she'd started keeping her phone face down. The new workout routine that kept her out until late evening. The expensive perfume that hadn't come from his birthday gift. His Delta training had taught him to trust his instincts, but his heart wanted to trust his wife. The internal conflict felt like standing on shifting ground. Everything looked normal on the surface, but something fundamental had changed beneath. "I'm thinking of taking Julie camping this weekend," Wade said. "Just the two of us. Father-daughter time." "Sure." Carrie finally looked up. "That sounds perfect." Her quick agreement stung more than objection would have. The woman who used to be jealous of any time he spent without her now seemed eager to have them gone. Wade excused himself to his workshop in the garage, where he maintained his equipment and kept his mind sharp with precision work. Tonight, he was rebuilding the engine of Julie's dirt bike, a project that let his hands stay busy while his tactical mind processed information. The motorcycle parts were arranged with military precision. Every bolt, gasket, and component in its designated place. Order imposed on chaos. It was how Wade approached every problem, from enemy positions to family dynamics. His phone buzzed with a text from his father. Julie's birthday next week. Taking her to see the new foals. Earl Richardson's ranch sat 40 miles north, near the fire tower that had served as a landmark for 3 generations of Richardsons. The old man had been hinting about updating his will, wanting to ensure Julie's inheritance was protected. Wade appreciated his father's foresight, though it felt premature to think about such things. Another text arrived, this one from his business partner. Contract approved. "We start the Hillcrest development Monday." Wade smiled. The Hillcrest project would cement Richardson Construction's reputation and provide financial security for Julie's future. Everything was falling into place. His business, his father's legacy, his daughter's bright future. Only his marriage felt like it was crumbling in his hands. Wade finished organizing his tools and headed back inside. Carrie had already gone to bed, her side of the mattress claimed with the defensive posture of someone guarding secrets. Wade lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to decide if he was overthinking normal marital drift or ignoring legitimate threats. His last thought before sleep was a memory from his Delta days. Trust your training, but verify everything. He had no idea how prophetic that thought would become. Chapter 2. Vanishing. The morning of July 15th started like any other summer day. Wade woke before dawn, completed his daily workout routine in the garage, and prepared breakfast while Julie bounced around the kitchen in her favorite purple dress, chattering about her plans to explore the creek behind their property. "Can I take the metal detector?" Julie asked, spreading peanut butter on her toast with the concentration of a surgeon. "As long as you stay within sight of the house," Wade replied. He'd bought the detector for her 6th birthday after she'd shown interest in treasure hunting shows. So far, her biggest discovery had been a 1967 quarter, which she displayed in her room like a priceless artifact. Carrie emerged from their bedroom, dressed in civilian clothes instead of her uniform. "No shift today?" Wade asked. "Personal day. Catching up on errands." She grabbed an apple and headed for the door without her usual goodbye kiss. "I'll be back late." After Carrie left, Wade spent the morning reviewing contracts for the Hillcrest project while Julie explored the backyard. Every 15 minutes, he'd check on her through the window, a habit formed by years of tactical awareness and fatherly love. At 11 a.m., Wade stepped outside to offer Julie a snack and found the backyard empty. "Jules," he called, scanning the creek area where she'd been hunting for treasure. The metal detector lay abandoned beside a small hole she'd been digging. Wade's pulse quickened, but he forced himself to stay calm. 8-year-olds were naturally curious. She'd probably followed something interesting into the woods. "Julie," his voice carried across the property, echoing off the tree line. No response. Wade grabbed his phone and tried calling her smartwatch, a compromised device that let her feel grown-up while keeping her connected. The call went straight to voicemail. Now Wade's training kicked in. He retrieved his binoculars and conducted a systematic grid search of the surrounding area. Julie knew the boundaries of their property better than most adults knew their own neighborhoods. She wouldn't have wandered far unless something had drawn her away. By noon, Wade's concern had evolved into genuine alarm. He called Carrie, but her phone went to voicemail. He tried the sheriff's department and learned she'd called in sick. Wade's mind began processing scenarios with clinical detachment. Child abduction, animal attack, accidental injury. Each possibility demanded different search protocols. He called his father. Earl Richardson arrived within 20 minutes, bringing 2 of his ranch hands and their tracking dogs. "She's a smart girl," Earl said, gripping Wade's shoulder. "We'll find her." The search expanded through the afternoon. Neighbors joined the effort. The official sheriff's department response began at 3 p.m., led by Deputy Salvatore Perkins. Perkins approached with theatrical concern. "Mr. Richardson, I want you to know we're treating this with absolute priority." Wade studied the deputy's face, noting the man's composed demeanor. Most people showed genuine stress when dealing with missing children. Perkins seemed almost rehearsed. "Where's my wife?" Wade asked. "Deputy Richardson is handling some specialized inquiries," Perkins replied smoothly. "She'll be in touch soon." The non-answer triggered Wade's threat assessment protocols. Something was wrong beyond Julie's disappearance. As evening approached, the search teams returned without results. Julie had vanished as completely as if she'd never existed. Wade stood in his empty backyard, staring at the abandoned metal detector, feeling the foundations of his world cracking beneath him. His phone rang. Carrie's number. "Wade, I just heard. I'm so sorry I wasn't available. I was handling something confidential for the department." "Where are you now?" "Heading home. We'll find her, Wade. I promise." The line went dead. Wade stared at his phone, noting that Carrie's number had shown a location 40 miles north, near his father's ranch and the old fire tower. Why would Carrie be in that area while their daughter was missing? Wade walked through Julie's room, touching her drawings and stuffed animals, trying to make sense of a day that had started normal and ended in nightmare. One drawing caught his attention, a crayon sketch of their family, but with a fourth figure in the background. A man in a deputy's uniform. Julie had drawn Salvatore Perkins into their family picture. Wade felt the first stirrings of something cold and dangerous awakening in his chest. The part of him that had earned the nickname the Kraken during his Delta Force years. The operator who could stay calm while everything burned around him, who could think 3 moves ahead of any enemy. If someone had taken his daughter, they'd just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Wade Richardson was about to remember why his platoon had called him by that name. Chapter 3. The Call. 2:41 a.m. Wade sat in Julie's room, surrounded by search maps and timeline notes, when his phone shattered the silence. The display showed State Trooper, a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Richardson? This is Trooper Martin Levy. I need you to get to Pine Ridge Regional Hospital immediately. Your father's been shot. The words hit Wade like incoming artillery. What happened? He's in critical condition. Shot in the chest. Sir, he was found near the old fire tower on his property around midnight. Before the paramedics sedated him, he kept asking for you. Said he saw something important. Wade was already moving, grabbing his keys and jacket. What did he see? He mentioned your wife and her deputy boyfriend digging by the fire tower. Mr. Richardson, your daughter's been missing for 36 hours now. We think these incidents might be connected. The phone nearly slipped from Wade's grip. His father had seen Carey and Perkins together, digging, near the fire tower. They spotted him. Trooper Levy continued. That's when they shot him. Your father managed to crawl to his truck and drive almost a mile before he collapsed. He's tough, but Wade was already in his truck, engine roaring to life. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of dark country roads and racing thoughts. Wade's mind processed the information with tactical precision, even as his heart threatened to tear apart. Julie missing. His father shot. Carey and Perkins together, digging by the fire tower. Digging. The word echoed in Wade's mind with horrible implications. Pine Ridge Regional Hospital's emergency entrance was a harsh fluorescent oasis in the night. Wade found Trooper Levy in the waiting area, a tall, weathered man in his 50s with intelligent eyes and the bearing of someone who'd seen too much. How is he? Wade asked. Alive. The bullet missed his heart by inches, but there's internal bleeding. They're operating now. Levy gestured to a chair. We need to talk. Wade remained standing. Tell me exactly what happened. Your father called 911 at 11:47 p.m. Said he'd been investigating strange activity on his property. Vehicles near the fire tower after dark. When he went to check it out tonight, he saw your wife and Deputy Perkins digging what looked like a grave. The room seemed to tilt around Wade. A grave. They had shovels, a tarp, something wrapped inside it. When they spotted your father, Perkins drew his service weapon and fired without warning. Your father took cover, but the bullet caught him as he was retreating. Where are they now? That's the problem. Deputy Perkins called in a story about responding to reports of an armed trespasser on the Richardson Ranch. He claims he fired in self-defense when your father allegedly threatened him with a rifle. Wade felt his Delta training override his emotional response. Enemy contact. Multiple hostiles. Mission compromised. His father and daughter were casualties, and the enemy was wearing badges. What about my wife? She corroborated Perkins' story. Claims she was riding along on a routine patrol when they encountered your father acting erratically. That's impossible. My father called me yesterday evening. He was perfectly lucid. I believe you, Mr. Richardson. But right now, it's 2 law enforcement officers' word against a wounded rancher's testimony. Levy leaned forward. Unless we can prove what they were really doing out there. A doctor in surgical scrubs approached them. Family of Earl Richardson. His son, Wade said, we've stabilized him for now, but the next few hours are critical. He's sedated, but he was asking for you earlier. He seemed desperate to tell you something. Wade followed the doctor to the ICU. His father looked smaller than Wade had ever seen him, surrounded by machines and tubes. But when Wade took his hand, Earl's eyes opened with surprising clarity. Son, Earl whispered, his voice barely audible. There's something you must know. Wade leaned closer. I'm here, Dad. You're safe now. Julie, she found something. Called me yesterday morning, excited. said she discovered a big secret with her metal detector. Wade's blood went cold. What kind of secret? Something buried. Something that scared your wife when Julie told her about it. Earl's grip tightened with desperate strength. Wade, that's why they took her. Julie found something they'd hidden. The pieces clicked into place with terrible clarity. Julie had discovered something during her treasure hunting. Something that threatened Carrie and Perkins. Instead of just moving whatever was buried, they decided to eliminate the witness. His 8-year-old daughter. Dad, where is she? They were digging a new hole tonight. Moving evidence. But Julie, Earl's voice faded as the sedatives pulled him under. Wade stood over his father's bed, feeling something ancient and primal awakening in his chest. The calm, analytical part of his mind cataloged resources and planned tactical responses. But beneath that, the Kraken stirred, the part of him that had made enemy combatants flee in terror, that had earned him a reputation as one of Delta Force's most relentless operators. They'd hurt his family. They'd taken his daughter. They'd shot his father. Now they were about to learn why Wade Richardson's platoon had nicknamed him after a legendary sea monster that dragged ships to the depths. Wade walked back to where Trooper Levy waited, his face now carrying an expression that made the veteran officer straighten unconsciously. Trooper Levy, Wade said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to life-and-death decisions. I need you to tell me everything you know about Deputy Salvatore Perkins. And then I need you to stay out of my way. The Kraken was awake. Chapter 4, Awakening. Wade left the hospital as dawn broke over Pine Ridge County, his mind operating with the cold precision that had made him legendary in special operations. Trooper Levy had provided crucial intelligence. Perkins had gambling debts, a cocaine habit, and connections to a drug trafficking operation that used the remote areas around the fire tower. Julie had stumbled onto their burial ground for evidence or victims. Now she was either leverage or already dead. Wade drove to his father's ranch, where crime scene tape fluttered around the fire tower like yellow warnings. The area showed signs of recent digging, hastily filled holes and disturbed earth. Wade studied the scene with tactical eyes, reading the story written in footprints and scattered debris. 2 people had worked here, but not efficiently. Panic digging. They'd been moving something heavy, wrapped in plastic. Fresh tire tracks led away from the tower toward the county road. Wade's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. If you want to see Julie alive, you'll stop investigating. Some secrets should stay buried. Instead of fear, Wade felt the familiar calm that had always preceded his most dangerous missions. His enemies had just confirmed Julie was alive and revealed they were monitoring his movements. Wade drove home to find Carrie's patrol car in the driveway. She sat at the kitchen table in uniform, playing the role of concerned wife perfectly. Wade, thank God you're back. How's Earl? Alive. Wade studied his wife's performance, noting the micro-expressions that betrayed her act. Dark circles under her eyes, nervous energy in her fidgeting hands, the slight tremor in her voice that suggested guilt or fear. This is such a nightmare, Carrie continued. A random attack on Earl, Julie still missing. I can't imagine who would. Cut the shit, Carrie. The words hit her like a physical blow. Wade watched her mask slip for a microsecond, revealing something calculating and cold beneath. Wade, I don't understand. My father saw you and Perkins digging by the fire tower. He saw you shoot him. Wade sat across from her, using the interrogation skills Delta Force had taught him. The only question is whether Julie is already dead or if you're keeping her alive as insurance. Carrie's composure cracked completely. Wade, you don't understand what you're dealing with. Enlighten me. Salvatore has connections. Dangerous people. If we don't handle this carefully. You mean if I don't let you get away with whatever you buried out there? Carrie's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and Wade caught sight of the message. Is he contained? Wade's training kicked in. In one fluid motion, he lunged across the table and seized Carrie's wrist before she could respond to the text. Her phone clattered to the floor. Bad move, Wade said quietly. Now I know you're in active communication with your accomplices. Wade, please. Where's my daughter? I can't. They'll kill her if I... Wade applied precise pressure to nerve points in Carrie's wrist, a technique designed to cause intense pain without permanent damage. Then we'll have to make sure they don't get the chance. Carrie gasped, her professional composure evaporating. She's alive. We never wanted to hurt her, but she found the grave, and what grave? A drug dealer Salvatore killed last year. Tommy Guzman. He was going to expose the operation. So Salvatore buried him by the fire tower. Julie's metal detector found Tommy's jewelry. Wade released Carrie's wrist, his mind racing. Tommy Guzman had been reported missing 14 months ago. If Julie could testify about finding buried evidence, it would expose not just a murder, but an entire drug trafficking network. Where is Julie now? Salvatore has her at the old mining camp, 20 miles north of the fire tower. Carrie rubbed her wrist, tears streaming down her face. Wade, I never wanted this to happen. Salvatore said we'd just scare her into keeping quiet, but then your father saw us moving the body, and you decided murder was easier than facing consequences. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Wade stood, his movement controlled and predatory. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Perkins and tell him I'm cooperating, that I'm scared and want to meet to discuss terms. He'll never believe that. He'll believe it because you're going to be very convincing. Because if you're not, I'm going to forget every civilized thing the Army taught me and remember only what Delta Force trained me to do to enemies who threaten my family. Carrie stared at Wade, seeing something in his eyes that made her shrink back. This wasn't the general contractor who read bedtime stories. This was the operator who'd earned his nickname in classified operations across 3 continents. Okay, she whispered. What do you want me to say? Wade smiled, but there was nothing warm in the expression. Tell him Wade Richardson wants to make a deal. Tell him the Kraken is ready to negotiate. The use of his old call sign would mean nothing to Perkins, but Wade knew Carrie understood its significance. She'd heard enough stories to know that name belonged to a different man, one who'd never lost a mission or left an enemy breathing. As Carrie reached for her phone with shaking hands, Wade began planning the kind of operation that had made him legendary in circles that didn't officially exist. Salvatore Perkins was about to learn why monsters from the deep were feared by sailors across every ocean. Chapter 5. The Hunter. Wade sent Carrie to the sheriff's department with specific instructions, knowing her performance would be crucial to his plan's success. Meanwhile, he drove to a storage unit on the outskirts of town, a facility where he kept items from his military career that civilians weren't supposed to possess. The unit contained equipment that officially didn't exist: night vision gear, tactical communications equipment, weapons that had never appeared on any inventory sheets, and most importantly, intelligence files he compiled on local law enforcement during his transition to civilian life. Wade had made it his business to know everyone who carried a badge in Pine Ridge County. Salvatore Perkins' file, made for disturbing reading. Excessive force complaints, unexplained income, and connections to known drug dealers. The man was dirty, but he'd been careful enough to avoid prosecution. Until now. Wade's phone rang. Trooper Levy. Richardson, we've got a problem. The sheriff just received a call from your wife, claiming you've become unstable and might be planning vigilante action. There's talk of issuing a warrant. How long do I have? Maybe 2 hours before they make it official. What's your play? Wade had made a judgment call about Levy during their hospital conversation. The trooper was old-school law enforcement, someone who cared more about justice than politics. Perkins has my daughter at the old mining camp. He's using her as leverage to cover up the murder of Tommy Guzman. Silence on the line. Then, Guzman disappeared 14 months ago. Case went cold because Perkins killed him and buried the body by the fire tower. Julie found evidence with her metal detector. Wade loaded tactical gear into his truck. I need you to make a choice, trooper. Help me get my daughter back, or explain to your superiors why you let a corrupt deputy murder an 8-year-old girl. What kind of help? Create a distraction. Draw Perkins' attention south while I approach from the north. And Levy? When this is over, you'll find enough evidence at that mining camp to put him away forever. Wade ended the call and drove toward the mining camp, his mind shifting into the tactical mindset that had served him through dozens of high-risk operations. The old copper mine had been abandoned for 30 years, leaving behind a maze of buildings, shafts, and equipment perfect for hiding hostages. 3 miles from a camp, Wade parked his truck and continued on foot. The equipment felt familiar on his body: body armor, night vision, communications gear, and weapons selected for close-quarters combat. He moved through the forest with the silent efficiency of a predator, every step calculated to avoid detection. The mining camp sat in a valley surrounded by hills, giving Wade multiple approach routes and observation positions. Through his scope, he identified 3 buildings that could house hostages: the old administrative office, the equipment shed, and the main processing building. Wade's phone vibrated with a text from Perkins. Change of plans. Meet at the mine in 1 hour. Come alone or the girl dies. The message confirmed Perkins' location, but also revealed his panic. The deputy was moving faster than planned, which meant something had spooked him. Wade replied, "On my way." No police. Then he called Carrie. "What did you tell him?" "That you were asking questions about Tommy Guzman. That you might have found something at the fire tower." Carrie's voice shook. "Wade, he's scared. When Salvatore gets scared, he does terrible things." "Where exactly is he keeping Julie?" "The old office building. It has a basement where they used to store explosives." "Wade, please be careful. He's not stable." Wade ended the call and moved closer to the camp. Through his night vision scope, he spotted movement in the office building. 2 figures visible through windows. One adult-sized, one child-sized. Julie was alive. Wade circled to the north side of the building, using abandoned mining equipment as cover. The structure was old but solid, with multiple entry points and clear sight lines. Wade identified Perkins' position on the 2nd floor, while Julie appeared to be held in the basement. Classic tactical problem. Hostage rescue in a multi-level structure with an unstable subject. Wade had faced similar scenarios in Iraq and Afghanistan, but never with his own daughter as the hostage. At exactly 11 p.m., Wade's phone rang. "Richardson, you out there?" "I'm here, Perkins. Let me see my daughter. First, we need to establish some ground rules. You're going to walk away from all this. Forget what you think you know about Tommy Guzman. Forget what your father claims he saw. In exchange, you get your daughter back. And if I refuse, then Julie joins Tommy in a hole nobody will ever find." Wade had heard enough. He activated his communications equipment and spoke quietly into his throat mic. "Levy, you in position?" "Roger. Ready when you are. Execute distraction on my mark." Wade moved to the building's rear entrance, noting the tactical advantages of his position. "Mark, 2 miles south, Trooper Levy activated his emergency lights and siren, creating the illusion of law enforcement response." Wade heard Perkins curse and move away from the window. Wade slipped into the building like a shadow, his movements silent and precise. The basement stairs were to his left, Perkins' position directly above. Wade had perhaps 30 seconds before Perkins realized the distraction was a feint. He found Julie in a storage room, zip-tied to a chair but unharmed. Her eyes widened when she saw him, but Wade placed a finger to his lips, and she nodded with the quick understanding of a child who'd inherited her father's tactical mind. Wade cut her restraints and lifted her, whispering, "Daddy's here. We're going home." Footsteps thundered overhead as Perkins realized he'd been outmaneuvered. Wade carried Julie toward the rear exit, but stopped when he heard the deputy's panicked voice. "Richardson, I know you're in here. You want your daughter to live? You'll come out now." Wade set Julie down behind cover and drew his sidearm. The hunt was over. Now came the reckoning. "Julie, remember the game we played in the backyard? Hide and don't move until Daddy says it's safe." She nodded, her trust in him absolute despite their circumstances. Wade Richardson stepped into the main room, no longer a worried father, but a Delta Force operator in his element. Salvatore Perkins stood at the top of the stairs, service weapon drawn, but shaking in his grip. "Deputy Perkins," Wade said calmly, "you've made some very poor choices." The Kraken had found his prey. Chapter 6, Revelations. "Put your weapon down, Richardson." Perkins shouted from the top of the stairs, but his voice cracked with fear. The confident deputy who'd terrorized Pine Ridge County now faced something he'd never encountered, a predator more dangerous than himself. Wade remained perfectly still, his own weapon steady, and aimed with surgical precision. You know, Perkins, I've been wondering something. A simple drug operation doesn't usually require kidnapping children. There's more to this story. Shut up and drop your gun. Tommy Guzman wasn't just going to expose your drug trafficking, was he? Wade took a step forward, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone in complete control. He found out about something bigger. Perkins' hands shook more violently. You don't know what you're talking about. Then enlighten me. You got maybe 5 minutes before Trooper Levy figures out my distraction and comes looking. Tell me why killing an 8-year-old girl seemed like a reasonable solution to your problems. Tommy was blackmailing us. Said he had evidence of murders, not just drug dealing. Multiple murders? 3 hikers who disappeared last year. They stumbled onto our operation in the National Forest. Salvatore panicked, and Perkins' voice broke. It wasn't supposed to be like this. We just moved product, took our cut. But when people started asking questions, Wade processed this revelation with growing horror. This wasn't just about corruption. It was about a serial killer wearing a badge. Where are the other bodies? Scattered across the county. Places nobody would think to look. Perkins wiped sweat from his forehead. Tommy helped bury them, but then he got scared. Started talking about confessing. So you added him to the collection. We had no choice. Wade heard sirens in the distance. Either Levy calling for backup or the sheriff's department responding to reports of the distraction. Time was running short. Here's what's going to happen, Perkins. You're going to tell me where those bodies are buried. All of them. In exchange, I'll let you surrender to Trooper Levy instead of handling this personally. You can't guarantee that. They'll give me the death penalty. Better than what I have planned. Perkins stared at Wade, seeing something in the operator's eyes that made his decision. There's a map. In my truck outside. Coordinates for all the burial sites. Julie, Wade called without taking his eyes off Perkins. Are you okay, sweetheart? I'm here, Daddy. Her voice was small but steady. Good girl. Stay hidden until I tell you it's safe. Footsteps pounded outside the building. Multiple vehicles, doors slamming, voices calling orders. Wade recognized Trooper Levy's voice among them, but also others he didn't know. Richardson, this is Sheriff Terrence Goodman. Come out with your hands visible. Wade smiled grimly. The sheriff's arrival complicated things, but it also meant this nightmare was ending one way or another. Perkins, you have one chance to do the right thing. Walk down those stairs, put your weapon on the ground, and tell the sheriff everything you just told me. They won't believe me over you. You're the one who broke into a building with an assault rifle. Actually, Wade said, producing a small recording device from his vest, they'll believe this. Perkins' face went white as he realized Wade had recorded their entire conversation. Plus, there's the matter of my father's testimony, the physical evidence at the fire tower, and whatever we find in your truck. Wade gestured toward the stairs. Your only hope is cooperation. The siren stopped outside. Wade could hear tactical teams taking positions around the building. Richardson, Sheriff Goodman's voice boomed through a bullhorn. We have the building surrounded. Send out the hostage and surrender. Wade made a decision that would have impressed his Delta Force commanders. Instead of shouting back, he activated his throat mic and switched to the emergency frequency he knew Levy would be monitoring. Trooper Levy, this is Wade Richardson. I have Deputy Perkins in custody and my daughter is safe. Perkins has confessed to multiple murders and is prepared to surrender. I need you to take point on this before the sheriff's department destroys evidence. A pause. Then Levy's voice crackled back. Roger. Give me 30 seconds. Through the windows, Wade watched Levy approach Sheriff Goodman, engaging in what appeared to be an intense conversation. Wade couldn't hear the words, but the body language suggested Levy was asserting state authority over the scene. Perkins, Wade said quietly, this is your last chance to walk out of here breathing. The state police are taking jurisdiction, which means you'll face a fair trial instead of whatever your department might have planned. Perkins looked at Wade for a long moment, then slowly placed his service weapon on the floor. Those hikers, they were just kids, college students on spring break. They didn't deserve what happened to them. No, they didn't. I tried to stop him after the first one, but Salvatore said we were in too deep. Said if one of us went down, we all did. Wade heard movement outside. The sheriff's deputies being repositioned as state police took control of the scene. Daddy. Julie's voice carried uncertainty and fear. It's almost over, sweetheart. You were so brave. Trooper Levy's voice echoed through the building. This is the state police. We're coming in. Everyone remain calm and follow instructions. Wade holstered his weapon and raised his hands as tactical officers flowed into the building with professional efficiency. Within minutes, Perkins was in custody. Julie was safe in Wade's arms, and the nightmare that had begun with a missing child was finally ending. But as Wade held his daughter and watched Perkins being led away, he knew the real reckoning was just beginning. For families had lost loved ones to a corrupt deputy's violence. Their killer was caught, but justice would require more than just an arrest. The Kraken had surfaced, and he wasn't finished hunting yet. Chapter 7. The Trap. 2 weeks after Perkins' arrest, Wade sat in the county courthouse listening to Assistant District Attorney Christina Connolly explain why the state's case might fall apart. Perkins is claiming duress, she said, spreading files across the conference table. Says he was forced to participate by threats against his family. His lawyer is arguing that without corroborating evidence from other participants, we can't prove intent. Wade felt the familiar cold anger rising in his chest. What about his confession? Inadmissible. You weren't law enforcement when you recorded it. Defense will claim coercion. Trooper Levy shifted uncomfortably in his chair. What about the physical evidence? The bodies? We found 3 of the 4 burial sites Perkins described, but without a clear chain of custody or witness testimony linking him directly to the murders, a good defense attorney might create reasonable doubt. Wade studied the prosecutor's face, reading the subtext she couldn't say directly. Perkins had connections, money, and legal resources. The drug trafficking operation he'd participated in had funded high-powered defense attorneys who specialized in getting corrupt cops reduced sentences. What about my wife's testimony? Carrie Richardson is cooperating, but she's also implicated. Jury might see her as trying to save herself by sacrificing Perkins. Connolly gathered the files. I'm not saying we can't win, but it's not the slam dunk it should be. That evening, Wade sat in his father's ranch kitchen while Earl recuperated from his surgery. Julie was staying with her grandfather while Wade sorted through the legal complexities of prosecuting her kidnapper. You're planning something, Earl observed, studying his son's expression. I recognize that look from your Army days. The legal system might fail us, Dad. If Perkins walks on a technicality, you'll handle it your way. Wade didn't answer directly. Julie found something else with her metal detector. Before all this started, she never got to show us. What kind of something? A lockbox, buried near where she found Tommy Guzman's jewelry. I think Perkins and his associates kept records, evidence, maybe even insurance policies on each other. Earl leaned forward. You think there's more evidence out there? I think corrupt cops are paranoid by nature. They document everything in case they need leverage. Wade pulled out a topographical map of the area around the fire tower. Julie marked 17 locations where her metal detector found buried metal objects. We only searched one. That's a lot of digging. Not if you know what you're looking for. Wade smiled, but there was nothing pleasant in the expression. Perkins isn't the only one involved in this operation. His arrest spooked the others, but they're still out there, still profiting from murder. What do you need? Time. And someone to watch Julie while I do what needs to be done. The next morning, Wade began implementing a plan that would have impressed his Delta Force instructors. Using his construction business as cover, he started a land survey project on various properties around Pine Ridge County, locations that corresponded to Julie's metal detector readings. The first site yielded nothing more than old farming equipment. The second revealed a buried drug cache worth $50,000. The third site produced what Wade had been hoping for, a waterproof container filled with photographs, documents, and digital storage devices. The contents told a story of systematic corruption spanning 3 years and involving 5 law enforcement officers, 2 county officials, and a network of drug dealers operating across state lines. Perkins had been careful to document everything, names, dates, locations, and most importantly, evidence of who had ordered the murders. The real mastermind wasn't Perkins at all. It was Sheriff Terrence Goodman. Wade studied surveillance photos showing Goodman meeting with known drug dealers, accepting briefcases full of cash, and personally overseeing the burial of evidence. The sheriff had used Perkins as his enforcer while maintaining plausible deniability. But Wade's discovery went beyond corruption. The documents revealed that the three murdered hikers hadn't stumbled onto the drug operation by accident. They'd been deliberately lured to the area by someone posing as a park ranger, then killed to test the group's willingness to commit murder for profit. Goodman had been grooming his officers for escalating violence, creating a climate where killing witnesses seemed normal. Wade photographed everything, made multiple backup copies, and then began phase 2 of his plan. Using skills learned in psychological operations, he started leaving anonymous tips that led investigators to secondary evidence. Each discovery supported the narrative of systematic corruption while protecting Wade's role in uncovering it. Meanwhile, he watched Sheriff Goodman's behavior carefully. The man was starting to crack under pressure, making increasingly desperate attempts to control the investigation. Wade recognized the signs. Goodman was preparing to run or eliminate remaining threats, which made him predictable. Wade leaked information through carefully chosen channels that suggested Julie had seen more than just Tommy Guzman's burial. He let it be known that his daughter might have witnessed other crimes during her metal detecting adventures. The bait worked perfectly. Wade's surveillance equipment detected someone watching his house, following Julie to school, and making inquiries about their family schedule. Sheriff Goodman was planning one final solution to his problems. Wade smiled as he reviewed the intelligence he'd gathered. The sheriff thought he was hunting a worried father and vulnerable child. Instead, he was walking into a trap designed by someone who'd spent years perfecting the art of luring enemies into kill zones. The Kraken wasn't just hunting now. He was fishing with live bait, and the biggest predator in Pine Ridge County was about to take the hook. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. Sheriff Terrence Goodman made his move on a Thursday night when heavy rain provided natural cover for his approach. Wade's security cameras tracked the sheriff's unmarked vehicle as it parked a quarter-mile from the Richardson house, followed by two figures moving through the darkness toward his property. Wade had been expecting this for 3 days. Julie was safe at her grandfather's ranch, protected by Earl and two of his most trusted ranch hands, men who'd served in Vietnam and understood the stakes. Wade's house appeared occupied thanks to automated lighting and carefully placed silhouettes. But in reality, it had become an elaborate trap. Wade positioned himself in his workshop, surrounded by equipment that told a different story than the one Goodman expected. Instead of construction tools, the space now contained tactical communications gear, weapons, and surveillance monitors showing every approach to his property. Through his thermal scope, Wade tracked two figures moving with military precision toward his house. Goodman had brought backup, probably another corrupt deputy from his inner circle. They were armed with suppressed weapons and moving with the confidence of men who'd done this before. Wade's phone buzzed with a text from Trooper Levy. "State police are 30 minutes out. Can you maintain position?" Wade replied, "Roger. Let them come." The sheriff and his accomplice reached the house and began checking windows, looking for the best entry point. Wade recognized the second figure through his scope, Deputy Owen Kaufman, another officer who'd been mentioned in the buried documents. Both men were wearing body armor and carrying assault rifles. This wasn't meant to be a subtle assassination. They planned to make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. Wade activated his recording equipment and switched to the emergency frequency. "Trooper Levy, this is Wade Richardson. Sheriff Goodman and Deputy Kaufman are attempting to breach my residence with intent to commit murder. I am in immediate danger." "Roger, Wade. Help is coming. Try to avoid engagement, if possible." "Negative. They're armed with automatic weapons and wearing body armor. I'm going to have to defend myself." Wade watched Goodman signal his partner to take position at the rear door while he approached the front. They moved with practiced coordination, suggesting they'd done this before. Wade thought about the murdered hikers, the young college students who'd been lured to their deaths by these same men. They deserved justice, but the legal system had failed them. Now, it was up to Wade to ensure their killers face consequences. Goodman breached the front door with explosive force, moving through the house with tactical precision. Wade tracked his progress through hidden cameras, letting the sheriff discover the house was empty while recording every moment of his illegal entry. Kaufman, Goodman's voice carried through the house. He's not here. His truck's in a garage. He's got to be somewhere. Wade smiled grimly as he watched them search his home, documenting their every move. They were providing evidence of their criminal intent with each room they violated. Through his scope, Wade saw Goodman discover the surveillance equipment in the living room, devices positioned to be deliberately obvious. "Son of a bitch has been watching us," Goodman snarled into his radio. "Find him. Now." That's when Wade made his presence known. "Sheriff Goodman." Wade's voice echoed through speakers placed throughout the house. "You're trespassing on my property with intent to commit murder. I have you under surveillance and have recorded your illegal entry." Goodman spun around, trying to locate the source of Wade's voice. "You killed those hikers, Sheriff. You ordered Perkins to murder Tommy Guzman. You tried to kill my father and kidnap my daughter." Wade's voice remained calm and controlled. "Now you're here to finish what you started. Come out, Richardson. Let's end this like men." "You mean like you ended it for those college kids? Lured them out into the woods and executed them." Wade watched Goodman's face through the thermal scope, seeing the moment when the sheriff realized his crimes had been fully documented. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Goodman shouted. "This is bigger than you think. There are people involved who will hunt down your family if you don't back off. Then I guess I'll have to hunt them first." Wade moved through the shadows outside his house, using skills honed in hostile territories to position himself behind his targets. Kaufman was standing guard at the rear door, his attention focused on the house's interior. Wade approached with silent precision, drawing his sidearm as he closed the distance. At 3 feet, he spoke quietly. "Deputy Kaufman." The man spun around, raising his rifle, but Wade was already moving. A precise strike to the throat dropped Kaufman instantly, his weapon clattering harmlessly to the ground. "Kaufman!" Goodman's voice carried panic now. "Report." Wade zip-tied the unconscious deputy and moved toward the front of the house. Through the windows, he could see Goodman becoming increasingly desperate, realizing his backup was gone. Sirens wailed in the distance. State police finally arriving with arrest warrants that Trooper Levy had obtained based on the evidence Wade had provided. "Sheriff Goodman," Wade called through the speakers. "You have 2 choices. Surrender now and face trial, or resist and face me. You think you're some kind of hero?" Goodman screamed. "You're just another killer hiding behind a flag." Wade stepped through the front door, his weapon trained on the sheriff with unwavering precision. "The difference is, I only kill people who deserve it." Goodman raised his rifle, but his hands were shaking with fear and adrenaline. Wade had faced enemy combatants across 3 continents, men who fought with the desperation of true believers. Sheriff Goodman was just a corrupt bully who'd never faced real opposition. "Drop your weapon," Wade commanded. Instead, Goodman pulled the trigger. The shot went wide, destroying a lamp behind Wade's position. Wade's return fire was precise and surgical, a single round that shattered Goodman's shoulder and sent his rifle spinning across the room. The sheriff collapsed, clutching his wounded arm and screaming in pain and rage. "You can't do this. I'm a law enforcement officer." "You were a law enforcement officer," Wade corrected, keeping his weapon trained on the wounded man. "Now you're just another criminal." Red and blue lights flooded through the windows as state police vehicles surrounded the house. Wade carefully placed his weapon on the ground and raised his hands as tactical officers entered. "This is Wade Richardson. The suspect is wounded and disarmed." Trooper Levy was the first through the door, taking in the scene with professional assessment. "You okay, Wade?" "Fine." Sheriff Goodman is under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, drug trafficking, and attempting to kill a civilian. Deputy Kaufman is zip-tied in the backyard, also under arrest. As paramedics treated Goodman's wound and state police officers processed the scene, Wade felt a deep satisfaction settle over him. The nightmare that had begun with Julie's disappearance was finally ending. But more importantly, for murdered young people would finally receive justice. The Kraken had completed his hunt. Chapter 9. Resolution. 6 months later, Wade sat in the gallery of the federal courthouse as Judge Santiago Guzman, Tommy's uncle, presiding over the case by special appointment, sentenced Sheriff Terrence Goodman to life in prison without possibility of parole. The evidence Wade had uncovered from Julie's metal detector sites had unraveled an entire criminal network. Goodman's operation had been selling drugs across 3 states while using badge authority to eliminate competition and witnesses. The 4 murdered victims were just the beginning. Federal investigators had identified 7 additional disappearances linked to the conspiracy. Deputy Salvatore Perkins had received a 25-year sentence in exchange for his testimony against Goodman. Deputy Owen Kaufman got 15 years. 3 other officers and 2 county officials were awaiting trial. Carrie Richardson sat in the defendant's section, having pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 5 years with possibility of parole in 3. Wade felt no satisfaction watching his wife face justice, only sadness for the choices that had destroyed their family. Mr. Richardson? Judge Guzman called from the bench. Would you like to make a statement? Wade stood, looking at the packed courtroom filled with families of victims, reporters, and law enforcement officers who'd worked to rebuild public trust after the scandal. Your Honor, when my daughter went missing, I thought my world was ending. I never imagined her disappearance would expose crimes that had destroyed so many other families. Wade's voice carried across the silent courtroom. Julie's curiosity and her metal detector revealed evidence that the legal system might never have found otherwise. Justice was served not because of my actions, but because an 8-year-old girl was brave enough to dig for treasure in her own backyard. Wade turned to face the victims' families. To the families of those we lost, your children's deaths weren't in vain. Their killers will never hurt anyone again. I hope this brings you some measure of peace. After the sentencing, Wade walked outside to find Julie and Earl waiting by his truck. Julie wore her school clothes and carried a small backpack, excited to tell him about her day. Daddy, did the bad guys go to jail forever? Yes, sweetheart. They can't hurt anyone anymore. Good. Julie hugged his leg fiercely. Can we go home now? I want to show you what I found with my metal detector yesterday. Wade laughed, the first genuinely happy sound he'd made in months. What did you find this time? A really old coin. Grandpa Earl says it might be from the 1800s. Earl Richardson grinned, his recovery complete and his faith in justice restored. She's got your attention to detail, son. Found it buried right next to the creek, just like she planned. As they drove home through Pine Ridge County, Wade reflected on the changes 6 months had brought. Richardson Construction had expanded, taking on projects across the state as word spread about Wade's character and integrity. Julie had returned to her normal routine of school, treasure hunting, and endless questions about everything she encountered. Most importantly, the family had healed. Earl spent more time at their house now, sharing stories and helping with Julie's homework. The 3 of them had grown closer through adversity, forming bonds that would last a lifetime. Wade's phone rang as they pulled into their driveway. Trooper Levy. Wade, thought you want to know. The FBI found evidence linking Goodman's operation to similar networks in 4 other states. Your daughter's discovery might have prevented dozens of future murders. Wade watched Julie run toward the house, eager to show him her latest treasure. Martin, I never asked to be a hero. I just wanted my daughter back. That's what made you the right man for the job. Take care of yourself, Wade. And thank Julie for me. That little girl saved more lives than she'll ever know. That evening, Wade stood in Julie's room watching her arrange her metal detector finds on a special shelf. Old coins, jewelry, and various artifacts she'd discovered in their backyard and around Earl's ranch. Each item represented hours of careful searching and the joy of discovery. Daddy, Julie looked up from organizing her collection. Are you sad about Mommy being in jail? Wade sat on her bed, choosing his words carefully. I'm sad about the choices she made, sweetheart, but I'm not sad that justice was served. Sometimes people we love make bad decisions, and there have to be consequences. Will she come back? Someday. But even when she does, things will be different. Julie nodded with the wisdom that children sometimes possess. That's okay. We're good at adapting to new situations. Wade smiled at her use of his favorite phrase. Yes, we are. Plus, we have Grandpa Earl and Trooper Levy and all our friends who helped us. Julie climbed into bed, pulling her blanket up to her chin. We have everything we need. As Wade tucked his daughter in and turned off the lights, he realized she was absolutely right. They'd lost a wife and mother to corruption and poor choices, but they'd gained something more valuable: absolute trust in each other and unshakable bonds forged through shared adversity. Wade Richardson was no longer the Delta Force operator known as the Kraken. He was simply a father who'd protected his family and a contractor building something positive in a community that had seen too much darkness. But he knew that if anyone ever threatened Julie again, the Kraken would be ready to surface. Some monsters were worth keeping in reserve. Outside, Pine Ridge County slept peacefully under a starlit sky, its citizens secure in the knowledge that justice had prevailed and their protectors could be trusted once again. Julie's metal detector sat in the garage, clean and ready for the next adventure. After all, there were always more treasures waiting to be discovered by someone brave enough to keep digging.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.